Nashua Board of Education meeting to order. It is now 7:12, and we are at the Nashua High School North Lecture Hall. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Mosher?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep, got you. Mrs. Oden?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes, here.
Ms. Raymond?
Here.
Ms. Timmons?
Yeah.
Ms. Hohensee?
Here.
Ms. Van Twyver is not here. Mr. Garino is here. Ms. Porter?
Here.
Ms. Sweeney is not here. Mr. Gillis?
Here.
Okay. We have a quorum.
Okay. We're going to have Mr. Garino will read the prayer, and Ms. Raymond will lead us in the pledge. But before so, I'd like to have a moment of silence for Alderman McCarthy, who has just been a real gift to the Nashua School District in his leadership in the Joint Special Building Committee. So we could all stand. Thank you.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all of our fellow citizens. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam President, I just want to ask, Mr. Mosher is joining us by telephone. Are you by yourself tonight, Mr. Mosher?
Yes, sir, I sure am.
Okay, and also Ms. Timmons is joining us by telephone. Are you by yourself, Ms. Timmons? Are you by yourself, Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda? If not, can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Okay, on the motion to accept the consent agenda, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yeah.
Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Mr. Garino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 8 yeses and 0 nos. Motion carries.
Okay. We are now at the public question comment period. It's limited to items on the agenda.
My name is Adam Marcoux. I live at 4 Jalori Lane. I'm president of the Nashua Teachers Union. First, on behalf of the union, we express our condolences to this board, the Board of Aldermen in our city, the loss of Alderman McCarthy. We probably wouldn't have this building if it might, for his leadership and his dedication to our city in multiple capacities. And we send our best wishes to his wife, Gloria, one of our paraeducators here in the city, and his family, and thank them for giving us Brian for 25 years in the city. I'm here tonight to speak on the Secretary's contract that's coming forward to this board. It passed the Secretary's unit 22-1. I think this is a good contract. I think it takes into account a lot of things. I think we left negotiations, both sides, and feeling good about where we started, where we ended, and I think this group gets overlooked sometimes in the roles they play in our schools, whether it be at the high schools with a lot of stuff with the guidance department and running reports for over 1,300 kids per building, or if it's some of the other tasks they do at the elementary and middle schools, doorbells, phones. I left my lunch at home. I can't find my lucky quarter. The things that go above and beyond what their job was when they started, what it is now, I don't think it's always recognized some of the things that are required of some of our secretarial staff district-wide. I'm happy to bring forward this contract with the district in hopes for ratification from the Board of Education tonight. And we look forward to moving it together to the Board of Aldermen. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. If not, we will move on to Superintendent's comments.
Hi, I just wanted to echo the comments that were said about Alderman McCarthy earlier with the Madam Chair, as well as the NTU President. I spoke briefly with Gloria last week. I gave her a call and just to see how she was doing, and I just wanted to say I didn't know Brian that well when I attended the funeral services on Saturday. It was just amazing to hear the stories and the knowledge and how many people he touched in the lives of in the people of Nashua. He has a nice recording that I think he taped about 2 weeks ago, just giving information on Nashua and welcoming families and giving a summary of how great Nashua is. And I encourage the public and anyone connected to Nashua to take a brief view of that. It was just amazing, and certainly I'll echo the sentiments that were shared earlier. We will miss Brian, his leadership with the construction and just the wealth of knowledge he had for the schools and for kids, and what a great man. With that said, it has been busy in the district. As we speak right now, Mr. Chopa is conducting one of our many strategic focus groups for our ELL parents over at the South and getting their feedback. So that is continuing on. We have been, I say the collective we, Sue, myself, and we have been ongoing with the focus group for strategic planning. It's exciting. I did a strategic planning session here with our North high school kids. We did one at the South, and it's been quite amazing. It's been fun. I try not to look at the schedule in terms of how many focus groups we have left to do. It's kind of a psychological thing I do with myself, and because I always say I have a lot less than when I started. So that's really going well. I just wanted to, I'm not going to do justice on what took place on Election Day in terms of professional development for this district. It is so difficult to organize, coordinate, plan professional development for just a district of 2,300 people. So you can only imagine that Assistant Superintendent Dr. McKinney, the leadership team, Donna, I'm not going to do justice, but it was just amazing to see the plethora of workshops that teachers had available to them on that professional development day. I mean, it was great. The comment that I had, it was unsolicited. It was something to the effect of, we haven't seen or had this level of professional development in so long. It felt like the, quote, old days. I don't know what the old days were because I wasn't here for the old days, but I can only tell you that people were very, very happy, and it just doesn't happen. Mike Anderson came back to do some follow-up to our opening day presentation, and so people had an opportunity to get to listen to his presentation, but also ask him intimate questions. If you could just imagine all of the teachers just moving around the South, I'd say, I'm sorry, about 800 teachers were at the South, about 800. And then at the North here, there was a presentation on drug prevention and substance use for our nurses and for social workers as well. So it was just a prodigious undertaking. I'm not going to do justice to what took place, but certainly I wanted to thank all the administrators, Garth, and anyone that helped coordinate that. Thank you so much. This past weekend at the Fairgrounds Middle School, there was a beautiful performance of Drop Dead Juliet. It's a little spoof on Romeo and Juliet of Shakespeare. So Shakespeare is in the corner rewriting Hamlet, rewriting Romeo and Juliet, and so the kids are acting that out. I just wanted to say that it was a lovely performance on Friday night, Saturday night, and Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and Sunday and Saturday at 4 o'clock. Thank you to all of those kids. Thank you, Ms. G. Thank you for all of the faculty that were there. It was quite a performance. It's just amazing what the kids can do in terms of arts, performing, and it was a great experience. So if you like Shakespeare or like Shakespeare, you've gotten it. I wasn't sure about the Hamlet thing, but Shakespeare, the Romeo and Juliet was pretty funny. Veterans Day Parade. All of our middle school students, our high school students marched in the parade to honor our veterans. I want to thank the band directors and everyone who was involved in orchestrating that. It's always cold downtown during that time, but the efficiency of this parade is just amazing. They line up at Holman Stadium. They're rain or when the cold, the kids do a wonderful job enduring the parade and really coordinating that. So that was a nice performance to see. If you haven't already, you can check out my Twitter. I was tweeting out as the kids walked by. I made sure that I got all of the kids from the Nashua Public Schools out there in some pictures. So you can check that out. In the district, we're doing POPS training, and POPS training has to do with policies surrounding child abuse, neglect, sexual harassment, staff, student boundaries, bullying, child restraint, and all of those things that are required annually. Ms. O'Gara is facilitating that, and certainly that is ongoing. So we're making our rounds through the schools. We had gone through a compliancy improvement monitoring last year with special ed. And part of that has to do, they've given us some recommendations in terms of how do we improve our overall function and operations of special education, the documentation process, the compliancy with special education law and IEPs. So we have gotten some recommendations to do those things. I just wanted to let you know that we got some feedback on how we can improve. It's a 2-year process, and we are currently working and doing all of those things that the DOE have asked of us. Just a special note, this isn't cause for alarm or anything like that, but the accolades we got back from the Department of Education around how we monitor and implement special education was commendable. Particularly in a district this size and how many students we have in special ed, the State Department was very complimentary of the department, and I want to again thank all of the special education teachers and even regular education teachers and anyone who was involved in that process. It's a lot of paperwork. You have to organize, you have to meet with state officials. It's just a compliancy piece. So I just want to say thank you. It's busy. The holidays are coming up. And we want to always keep our thoughts and minds and prayers with those that are less fortunate with us. So I always encourage teachers to make sure to reach out to those families that are in need of something, and we can certainly coordinate something through our homeless liaisons and other organizations that are willing to help families out in need as we approach the holidays. And finally, as I can say, I'm fully aware that there is a pending snowstorm, as my kids are texting me away as I speak, and I can only say that I'm looking forward to going to school on Friday. If that changes, I would encourage you to follow me on Twitter, no pun intended, but you should, and if that changes. But I hope it's as dry as this floor, and we can get a nice, good day of learning in, and as Hip Hop Harry said, I love to learn. I hope we can do that on Friday. Thank you. Hip Hop Harry's a little character. Either you know it or you don't.
Thank you.
You got it, Pat? You got it?
Board members' response to the comments of Dr. Mosley. I'll start on this side. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you, Mrs. Erden. Dr. Mosley, I know the administration, a lot of people have put a lot of work into the strategic plan. You made mention of that tonight. I actually do read these things that you hand out, and I'm happy to see that all these meetings are occurring. My concern is participation. The students from South, 17 students out of 1,800. There was only 2 students in the 9th grade, 4 students in 10th grade, 10 students 11th grade, and I understand why the seniors don't participate. They're already, in their heads, they've already graduated at the beach if they could be. My concern is less for the high school, quite honestly, but really for the middle school. Those are the kids that are really going to, and the elementary kids, obviously, they're the ones that are going to live through whatever process we come up with. And I think it's imperative that we get those kids involved. We don't have parental involvement because we don't have the kids buzzed. If the kids are buzzed, the parents will be buzzed. If the kids are buzzed, the teachers will be buzzed about it. There's no buzz. That's an internet terminology that we used to use at Lycos. There's no buzz, there's no traffic. There's no traffic, there's no revenue. In our case, if there's no buzz about the strategic plan, I'm concerned that all this work is going to be top down. The kids are not going to feel any ownership of it, and it's not going to be as successful as it could be. Thank you.
Ms. O'Hensey, do you have anything?
Yes, I just wanted to thank the superintendent for updating the kindergarten registration form to include the half-day kindergarten. We learned that this week, so I'm very pleased that that form has been updated.
Ms. Porter?
I want to make a comment about the in-service day. I am a person who was here back in those days when we used to have it, and it did feel a lot like that in a very positive way. I happened to be there with the Secretary's focus group, which was an amazing group. It went really well. And I just wanted to comment on the whole atmosphere was so positive and upbeat. When I drove in, the parking lot was at capacity, which was great. It was just hopping there. And so congratulations for a job really well done. It was great. Even though I didn't go to any of them, I could tell that people were really pleased. So thank you. Very good.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Dr. Mosley said, and also Mr. Marcoux, about our sadness with the passing of Alderman Brian McCarthy. He did so much for Nashua and so much for our kids, and was such a resource, I think, not just to everyone in Nashua, but also especially to this board and the Joint Special Building Committee. He knew everything there is to know about building and construction and building new schools, and I'm really going to miss his advice on that committee especially. Other than that, I'm excited to hear that we had a good day of professional development. I know teachers have been asking for that, or like giving them what they want to do their jobs the way that they'd like to do it. And I'm interested about the child abuse and neglect training that's going on. Is that through DCYF or something else?
That's internal for now, just going over. We have some new administrators in the district, as you've seen them kind of come through here a little bit, and certainly reviewing procedure, process, expectations, and my language is, and coming from Mass, we call them 51As, but they're called, a child in neglect, completing that report. Also, there's some regulations around that. For instance, you have 48 hours in which to report, and, the message that we keep hitting home is that in New Hampshire, as soon as you find you have any inclination or anything like that, file immediately. And so for some of us who are new to administration, we have new assistant principals who are making that transition from teacher to assistant principal. They need to have that information just readily available and walk them through sometimes that process.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. The reason that I'm asking about that is because, as you know, I've been reviewing our policies, and our policy on the mandated reporting is 17 years old, 16 years old. So it's significantly out of date with state law. And I do have a request out to DCYF to have somebody come to the next policy meeting and make sure that our policy is actually in line with how the state regulations now. Because I know that there have been a number of changes over the last 5 years to RSA 169C.
You quoted that right off the top of your head?
Yes, I worked there for 12 years. So, 7 here and 5 in New York, so I'm pretty familiar with it. But I know there have been a number of changes, especially over the last 5 years, regarding our opiate crisis. So just to have that in the back of our minds as things go forward, that we hopefully will have new and accurate information after the December policy meeting.
Thank you.
And I will share that when
love
that happens.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr. Mosier, do you have anything? Oh, Mr. Mosier?
Oh, he got disconnected.
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Timmons, do you have anything?
No, I'm just listening.
Okay. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to reiterate condolences to the McCarthy family. Brian has done so much for our high schools as well as other projects in our city, and he's going to be greatly missed. I also want to reiterate congratulations to the middle schools and high school bands for a job well done at the Veterans Parade. And one last point I want to make about strategic plans and planning, and I think that once the whole planning process is done, you could probably put together all your lists of people that cooperated and that were involved, and I think it's a really big list. Anyone who's done planning has worked on master plans for cities. I would bet that the number of people that you have participating in this strategic plan probably more than double what the city gets when it does its master plans. So as far as I'm concerned, having experience in the planning process and reaching out to stakeholders, I've been looking at those lists of people too. And oftentimes when I sit at public meetings for long-range transportation plans, we get 2-3 people for communities of 50,000. So you have reached out to a lot of people, and there's still opportunity for people to participate. They don't have to physically go somewhere, they can go online too. So I actually think that the opposite of what some other speakers said. I think your participation is very high. When you consider that, and you can check this out, you don't have to take my word for it. You can go to, go to the city planning department, go to the regional planning agency, see how many people they get for master plans. And you people probably have double or triple that amount.
Thank you.
Okay. I would just like to say, as a member of the Joint Special Building Committee, the 5 of us who sit on that, we're just taken aback by Alderman McCarthy's memory, his information, the depth of knowledge he had in so many various areas, whether it was engineering, the bonding issues. He remembered so much of what went on. I can remember at one meeting he said when they built this school, Pat Corbin was the principal, and he went to every student that was not going here, that was going to BG, and he gave each student a tour of the building, and all of those students came back to the high school. for somebody to know something small like that and bring it up and make it something that was important to decision-making, whether we renovate Elm Street or whether we build a new middle school, his leadership will be sorely missed. There is a big void to fill there. He was a walking encyclopedia who was always willing to share his knowledge. So to his family, my deepest condolences. Okay? Student board members, Mr. Gillis.
I guess I'd just like to talk about the Titan Drama Club. I think that's what you were mentioning earlier. I don't know, but I do the school announcements at North, so I kind of got to sneak peek. I read out every day that the drama club is doing the complete works of William Shakespeare abridged, and it's 6 actors in under 2 hours. I just thought that was pretty impressive, and it would probably be good to support the Titan Drama Club.
Thank you. And congratulations. I know you weren't here last time. I understand you and Ms. Sweeney were getting awards at the sports banquet, so congratulations. Committee on the Budget.
Ms. Oden,
Oh,
can I
I'm
have a
sorry.
moment to try and get
sure.
Mr. Mosher back?
Okay.
Thanks.
No. Okay. We'll try back in a bit then. Okay. The Budget Committee hasn't met. Committee on Finance and Operations.
Thank you, Madam President. We will be meeting tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. right here in this room.
Okay. Thank you. Committee on Policy.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. As I said earlier, our next meeting is in December on the 18th at 6 p.m. here. I haven't finalized the agenda yet, so I will let everyone know when that happens.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Of the policy chair. There was a policy that the committee had approved, aiding and abetting sexual abuse, that went to the attorney. I was wondering what the status of that.
I still don't have it back, so that's one of the things that I am working on between now and the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I would very much like that before the end of the year.
Yes.
Okay. Committee on Curriculum and Evaluation. You haven't met?
We haven't met, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. And your next meeting is in December, did I see? December 17th?
December 17 at 6 p.m. here.
You. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Relative to the Committee of Curriculum, there was the presentation, the iReady presentation that was given to that committee that had missing pages that Dr. McKinney had promised to the board. I still haven't seen that. Could you please make that available promptly?
That's been distributed from Ms. Kinsella. I'll have her resend it to you again this week.
Didn't get it.
I don't recall receiving it.
I'll send it out again.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay. Committee on Human Resources.
Okay, so we met earlier at 6:05 tonight. So do I have to suspend the rules? Okay.
Please.
So I make a motion to suspend the rules so that we can approve the appointments.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
On the motion to suspend the rules, Mr. Mosher,
I lost him.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter,
Yes.
I have 7 yeses. Motion carries.
Okay, so the first item is the recommendation to approve the Director of Food Service, which is Dahlia Daigle. She will be the Director of Food Service district-wide for the 2018-19 school year at an annual salary of $75,000.
Second.
Move,
Okay,
did you make a motion?
yes, Ms. Porter made the motion to recommend to approve the Director of Food Service.
Okay, second.
Okay, on the motion,
Who seconded that?
Ms. Hohensee did, I believe.
I think you did. Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I was very pleased when I met her. I was very impressed. I think we got a very good candidate.
On the motion, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
We have 7 yeses and 0 nos. Motion carries.
Okay, the second item is to accept the personnel recommendations dated November 13th, 2018.
Second.
Are you ready for the vote, Madam President?
Any questions? No, we are ready.
Okay, on the motion to approve personnel recommendations, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Motion carries 7 to 0.
Okay. And liaison reports. No. I do
I
have,
have to add,
I'm sorry, Miss Timmons?
I don't know, Susan, know the next, meeting for HR, November 26th.
I couldn't
We
understand.
can't hear you. It's not clear.
Okay. Our next HR meeting is November 26th, 2018.
Right.
At 5:30.
Put it right next to there, or I can try calling her back on the big one.
Can you say that again, please?
The next HR committee meeting is November the 26th, 2018, from 5:30 to 7 at National Law.
November 26th is the next meeting.
That's what I said.
Okay, of which?
Human Resources.
Human Resources?
Yes.
Okay,
I
thank you.
don't know if Susan is that.
That's not working.
Excuse me, Mrs. Oden.
Yes?
Would it be helpful if, since Mr. Mosier could not be reached, might it be worth we take a minute to
Why
bring
don't-
Ms. Timmons in over the box?
I think that's a fine idea. Thank you.
We're going to call you back. Gloria?
Okay.
Okay,
I'm right here.
okay.
I'm going anywhere. Bye.
I'll listen.
557-6913.
I did not recognize that as a valid entry. Sorry. Denise Rock. I did not recognize that as a valid entry. Sorry. Janice D.
You have to hit off.
Do 7 first.
I did 7. Do the 7th time. It's just so hard to
Needs a man's touch.
Hello?
Miss Timmons?
Yes, this is she.
Okay, we have you loud and clear now. Thank you. I know there are no liaison reports, but there is a Health and Wellness Committee of which Mr. Mosier had volunteered to represent the board. If anybody is interested in being the representative to the Health and Wellness Committee, I know Ms. Fitzpatrick is the administrator, so if anybody is interested in filling that position, we certainly could use somebody there. They meet maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and it's usually at the Y right here in Nashua. So if you could let me know if you're interested in that, I'd appreciate it. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Nashua High School North NEASC update, and I think that's why Mr. Burns is here.
So if I can just talk while Mr. Burns is getting set up. Last year, we had Mr. Burns and Mr. Richard here to talk about the NEASC process. And so last year, we had Mr. Richard come and talk a little bit about what that process feels and looks like at the South. And Nate was actually in the crowd, basically saying that he would be doing the same thing in terms of talking about the NEASC process here at the North. And, excuse me, we're having that presentation now as we start the process. I've already met with, along with Mr. Burns, around the NEASC process, what to expect, the overall process and how long it'll take, the self-reflection, the external review, all of those things that Mr. Burns is going to talk about. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Burns.
Would you like me to project it, or?
Would it be helpful?
Yeah, please. Would it be helpful there, Mary?
Dates. We need dates.
All right, good evening, everybody. So I'm here tonight just to talk a little bit about where we're at, what stage we're at as far as the NEASC accreditation process, and then more than happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. Just a review, so I think Keith spoke a couple weeks ago about the process and what it's all about, but basically it provides schools with some accountability and then a system to improve. And there's 3 basic phases. So self-reflection, which we were conducting over the past year and a half. Now we're prepping for our external peer review, so that site visit's going to be from December 2nd through December 5th here at Nashua North, so we're really prepping for that. And then we get some information from the visiting team chair. He's going to write up a report, and then we get some suggestions, critical strengths, critical needs, and then we basically come up with a plan to attack whatever it is that they recommend and suggest. Again, it's basically comes in, we have a set of standards that we're looking at, and we focus on these standards and determine whether or not we've put systems in place and processes in place in order to improve, and that we say that what we're doing is actually what we are doing. Consistency and connections across K through 20 throughout it's worldwide, but also primarily throughout New England. And then this can also be used to communicate to our community where we're at and whether or not we meet these research-based standards. As far as the Board of Education is concerned, kind of provides a little bit of information. So it's responsible for as the board is responsible for the quality of public education. This provides them with information about what's going on here at Nashua North. It also is used to ensure that the citizens that board policies and plans related to accredited schools are sound, and highlights areas that may need to be changed within the school or community. Here are the 7 basic standards, and I believe Keith talked to these again a couple weeks ago or last week. But we have core values and beliefs, curriculum, instruction, assessment of student learning, school culture and leadership, and then school resources for learning and community resources for learning. Our self-study basically was used over the past several months to kind of figure out where we align or how we align to the standards, and whether or not we do. And then we come up with some conclusions that are going to provide us some ways in which we can improve and support our efforts over the years. And then the self-reflection is a non-public working document, so it is something that we've been working on and dealing with. And then it's also used to come up with some strengths and weaknesses that the school has identified. And then the visiting team comes in and takes a look at those areas and tries to determine whether or not those are indeed strengths, and also our recommendations, and try to determine how we can move forward. So just kind of give you an update as far as what we've done here. So our faculty approved the standard reports and executive summaries at the beginning of October. We also use that information from the standards reports to identify our critical strengths and needs. And then as a team, we developed our 2-year and 5-year targeted plan for improvement based on those critical strengths and needs areas. The big part right now that we're working on is preparing for our external team visit. So we're talking to some of the stakeholders that need to come in for our on-site visit, so parents, students, and then also we've reached out to the board, and I'll provide you with some more information about that visit in a moment as well. The visiting team is going to come in on December 2nd in the morning and get their bearings, and then we'll have a panel presentation, which I think is on here, beginning at 1 o'clock, that kind of highlights some of the strengths and needs. We'll follow that up with teacher interviews, and then our welcome reception. From there, we have some concurrent meetings, our parent group, and also the Board of Education would be meeting, or members of the Board of Education would be meeting with the visiting team. And it's kind of split into 2 groups, so half of the visiting team members will be meeting with the parents, and half will meet with the Board of Education, depending on which standards they're working on and looking at during their visit. These are some of the topics, and I also included in the back of that packet the questions that they might ask, but these are basically the focus areas in which the questions will be directed towards the Board of Education, but they talk a lot about the development and evaluation of core values and beliefs, whether or not we're working on or how we've implemented the 21st century learning expectations that we've been working with over the last few years, the board's role in curriculum development and evaluation, instructional support and improvement, the grading policy and whether we've ensured that it's consistent between teachers, within the school, and across the district in some cases, the board's role in providing the principal with decision-making autonomy, the role in providing support and resources for all students, and then also the ability to get community support and provide sufficient funding and prioritizing needs. So these are some of the areas in which the questions that are found in the back of your packet focus on. So we kind of chunk them out for you. December 3rd through 5th, the visiting team will be present within the school. They'll begin with a facility tour. Some of the visiting team members will be shadowing students, so they'll be visiting classrooms throughout that process, but also those visiting team members will go out and visit other classrooms as well. Their goal is to see every teacher and be in every classroom at least once throughout their visit. We've done a pretty good job trying to make sure that the students that are being shadowed aren't in the same teachers' classes, so that way they can get a vast variety of classes, topics, levels. We've done the same with our student shadows, so we have students that are in general level, foundations, extensions, honors, and AP classes. We've also tried to do the same with our parent group as they come in to make sure that we are having a variety of stakeholders have their voice heard and have an opportunity to be heard throughout that process. As the visiting team's going through in these meetings, they're gathering evidence, and that evidence is then used to write their reports for each of the 7 standards. And then they use that evidence to evaluate us. They give us a rating. They also then confirm the strengths and recommendations, strengths and suggest some recommendations for us, and then they vote on whether or not they recommend that Nashua North should be an accredited institution. From there, the chair works on the draft of the summary and evaluation reports. Typically, that's through the process in January. A lot of that stuff goes back and forth between their office and with me. They kind of clarify some factual accuracies, check for any concerns that we may have as a school. They edit the document, and then in February or March, the report will then become public. And that's basically where we're at this point. So we're just in the phase right now of trying to prepare and make sure we're ready for that visit. Anybody have any questions?
I do have one question, Mr. Burns.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman, you'll be next. Okay, Ms. Timmons?
I just want to know, just curious to know if it's the same team they had at at South, I'm sorry.
Good question. So each of the, I don't typically know that a lot of schools send the same individuals to different places. There might be an occasion where you have those, but typically it's 16 educators throughout New England, and they volunteer to be on these processes. So usually it's not the same members that are going to be found at some of these institutions. Sometimes there are people that go out and visit multiple schools throughout a year, but I think it's typically 1 or 2 teachers from each school as they are prepping for their NEASC visit. They're typically the ones that go out and do these site visits.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Actually, I have 2 questions. The first one is more generic, and you may or may not know the answer. I don't know. Are there any accreditation standards for the middle or even the elementary schools?
I do believe there are elementary. If you just search the NEASC website, they do have accreditation standards on there, and I believe that there is information about that, but I don't know what they are.
Again, maybe Dr. Mosley can get back to us. So do we participate in those at the elementary?
I don't think we do in Nashua.
Is that an option? Why? I guess I would ask Mrs. Oden if we could have a future agenda item to look into this accreditation at the various elementary and middle schools in addition to the high school. It seems to me we should be doing it at all levels. And quite frankly, if it's kind of late for a school district in high school to determine if the elementary and the middle schools are preparing the kids for high school. So I think that should be captured a lot earlier, and I would appreciate a conversation about that. My second question has to deal with the data that's collected. They have their standards. They do this all over the country. So they've drilled down and they've concluded metrics that they want to measure and report on. So I'm curious, what data do they collect? And maybe you can share this with us later. And how is it used in the district to make better decisions? We as board members, we keep hearing about data-driven, and we see very little data. Mm-hmm. So NEASC is a huge undertaking, a lot of resources thrown at it, standards applied across hundreds or thousands of schools. So I'm just curious, how can we manage the district better knowing and using the data that NEASC provides to us? So I'm just curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that, and I believe it's already been sent out to the board, is that Endicott survey. That's one of their big data pieces or data points that they use, and they reflect constantly back on that. The other piece is, as they go through, we give them, as far as, I'm just going to back up to some of the standards real quick. This allows me to. So if we're looking at curriculum, they're going to look through and determine whether we have curriculum documents for all of our classes, as we say we do. They're going to look at, as they go in the classroom, are teachers varying their instructional practices? How are we assessing students? Do we have rubrics for each of the assignments? They'll have conversations with teachers about those things. So a lot of the evidence that they're gathering is kind of anecdotal evidence, as well as what we provide them. So we have student work samples that we have in bins that they're going to dig through and look at. And it's from a variety of different courses, a variety of different levels. Student abilities, we give them a whole bunch of, we give them a sample of a student that's really done well on an assessment, somebody who's kind of done okay, and then somebody who's done poorly on an assessment. They look for the feedback that those students get. They might look at some reports from the budget. They might look at committee meetings. They may look at a variety of different things that are through that, but they're not necessarily looking at, say, an SAT score or a PSAT score or anything as they go through.
Just one last question. Do they use rubrics in their evaluation?
Yeah, they do have rubrics that are that they use for their evaluations, and those are all available on that NEASC website as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Mr. Kaufman was talking about us doing more at the elementary school. Mr. Burns, how much is it costing to do each high school? Is it $15,000?
Yeah, I think typically it's 15 to 20,000. So On average, we're probably going to spend about 20 at each of the buildings.
So I guess we have 12 elementary schools, so we would have to look at that. It would be a cost anyway, and I think maybe administration can look and find out what type of information they have about that and how many schools use that. I wouldn't want to commit to that at this point. It's expensive, and we don't know how effective it is. So I'll ask administration to look at that. Anybody else? Mr. Guarino.
Accreditation and preparing elementary school and middle school kids for high school are two different things. So you don't really need, I mean, you know, it's nice to have accredited, but I can't imagine that our middle school principals and teachers are not preparing our elementary schools and middle school kids for high schools. I'm sure they're very much aware of it. I knew they were aware of it when I was going to school, so. So accreditation would be something that's separate. Am I right or wrong, or?
I would think that, yeah, they're probably two separate topics. I think one of the big things is looking at that vertical alignment and having conversations from the high school to the middle school to the elementary, and determining whether our curriculum's aligned, and that, you know, the data that we're receiving from each of the schools shows that students are achieving what we're, and learning what we're, you know, expecting them to learn as they move from, or progress from, you know, K to 12.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Burns. That's a lot of work. I know you've been working on this for a year and a half, and I remember what Principal Richard said. A lot of their recommendations had to do with money.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that'll probably come out in our evaluation as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Excuse me.
Gloria, are you still with us? Gloria?
Yeah, it's not in there anymore. It just completely disappeared.
Need the number?
What, 639?
6913.
I don't know what happened. It just wasn't there when I.
That happens all the time.
We've had a lot of technology issues tonight. Okay. Well, are you trying the cell phone?
I don't know, it just disappeared, like the number disappeared from the screen.
Okay. Well, we'll continue. The next item on the agenda is recommendation to rescind policy 1128.
Thank you, Mrs. Oden. This policy is the old Committee on Policy. When we updated the Committee on Policy to what we currently have, we failed to rescind this. I really thought we did in the main board meeting, but I looked through the minutes and we did not. So now we have two committees on policy, one that was approved in April and then this one hanging out. So we just need to rescind it to clean up our policy manual. right, so I move that we rescind policy 1128, Committee on Policy.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions or comments? Roll call.
Point of order, we don't need a roll call. We don't
that's
have
right.
anybody
Thank you.
online.
Thank you.
If I just
I
hang
can-
up on
I can still-
everyone,
I
you
can
know, it
still
works
take it.
out.
On the motion to rescind policy 1128, Mrs. Oden?
No, we don't need roll call. We can just,
Okay, aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nope, okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the policies on school lunch. We are going to look at those at, I believe, Finance, the Finance Committee, after the Meals Matter presentation. I think people feel like they would like to look at our policy. I think people are concerned about students not being fed, and we would like to look at our policy again. But I think it would have to go to Finance. I don't know what federal guidelines are in place. I know it's self-funded, and I'm not sure what we have from the federal government as to how we supplement it. I did read up in Claremont that they had a deficit of $33,000, and somebody stepped forward to pay the entire bill, and more people are giving money in the community to help the students that are not able to afford lunch. So I think it should go to policy so we know what the federal guidelines are, and then maybe we could send it to policy to change the policy. It would be a two-step process to make sure we have all the information. Or it could be a joint meeting. Miss,
Point of clarification, you said you wanted to send it to finance, and now you just said you wanted to send it to policy. I think it's best to policy. I mean, ultimately, it's a budget. You're going to end up in a budget committee at some point in the next round. But you just confused me in terms of which committee you intended to recommend it.
After it goes to finance and we get the information about federal guidelines, then it would go to policy. Or we could have a joint committee meeting.
I don't particularly, I don't think we can have a joint committee meeting because then we would have a quorum of the board.
Okay.
But I believe finance would be the appropriate place to do this. I did do some research on it. It looks like it was changed back in 2012 because of some financial burden where the district simply didn't have the budget to pay for lunch for everybody, and the school lunch program has to pay for itself at the end of the year, or the school has to take it over. And so I believe the decision was made back in 2012 to relieve some of the burden on our budgetary system and allow for other programs. Having said that, I don't think any one of us has any objection to changing it if the money's there. So to me, this is a question about budgets and money before it's a question of rewriting policy. I would hate to rewrite policy and then have us lose something else. Not to take anything away from the meals program, because I think that's fantastic, and seeing what the kids have done, and so that's where we're at.
So, Mr. Guarino, that will be going to your policy, your finance and operations.
Ms. Zoden, we need to vote on that. To send it, new business or
Okay,
even old business
okay.
going to committee, the board has to vote.
How many support the policy on school lunch going to finance to understand what the financial ramifications of that is? Okay.
You just want to call for aye?
Aye.
I mean, if you make it a motion
But
to
his
move
hand
it.
is up, so.
But there's no record.
The
Aye is-
ayes, how many agree?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody disagree? Thank you. Oh, update on teacher ease, and we had information in our packet from Dr. McKinney.
I can just, and Dr. McKinney, you can certainly talk more about it. I just thought it would just kind of helpful to give a background information on how we got to where we're at. I know there was some discussion at earlier previous board meetings around that. And so we just thought it would just help. This is purely informational. We just wanted to share it with the board. We are going to come back and, give an update at a later time. But we just thought it would be helpful to just get a sense of the genesis of the program, some of the supports that teachers have, and particularly building specifically outlets and resources that people can access in the event that they have some questions around teacherese. Teacherese and is not a directive coming from myself or Garth or Donna. It was something that got started through our teachers on the report card committee, and there was some discussion around how do we improve the grading system and make it easier for our teachers. I know at the previous board meetings there was some discussion that perhaps we should explore an all-in-one inclusive program, which I think is an important piece to that, and certainly to have that exploration is important. A district this size, again, takes a lot of time, takes a lot of resources to explore and implement. So I just thought, and we just thought it would be more informational than anything just to the board at this time.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions, and maybe a comment about this. Can you tell me who wrote this memo? It's not identified who wrote this.
Dr. McKinney?
Oh, okay. And then I think it's a very helpful document, but I would like to point out that it's dated November 7th, and the budgetary entry was put into the budget back in February, March during that cycle, not highlighted to the board that this was additional money to be spent. It occurred in August when the board was notified that teacher ease was desired to be purchased. This information would have been helpful in August when the board made that first discussion. And I just want to point out that the district has made a huge investment in terms of training. It's all highlighted in here, August 21st. It wasn't until the week before that the board learned of this entire initiative, yet resources were committed without approval, and I have a real problem with this, I just want you to know. And then additional 24 teachers were trained from August, on October 1st, whatever. The board didn't even approve the contract until, I think it was October 16th meeting. So October 10th meeting, it went to finance, the board saw it shortly thereafter. So please, if you have a major initiative like this, please advise the board early and often, and don't surprise us at the last minute with only 2 weeks left before school starts when you've already committed huge resources. Because you've put you've spent money you didn't have approval to spend. And I have a real problem with that. It might be all the best intentions in the world, and it might be better than sliced bread when it comes to doing a grade book. But the fact is, you spent money without approval, without prior approval, you committed resources, you performed training. It's bad practice. Just want to let you know. I'm not happy.
Thank you. Update on the safety training schedule.
Dr. McKinney, would you like to briefly talk, an update on that we continue to make strides in that area, and just a very brief update? Thank you.
Ms. Kinsella updated the training schedule to include the November trainings that happen at the middle school level. You see dates in here for Nashua High South in November 15th and 29th, as well as dates for Nashua High School North on December 10th and the 13th. Theirs is later due to the NEAS visitation and the process they're going through that Mr. Burns spoke of earlier. Safety training was also held on the in-service day for school secretaries. And we have another set of trainings coming up on the early release day for those faculty members that haven't attended the trainings that have already occurred both last year and this year. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Considering the effort that's put into this, could you please update the board when you get a chance to, I'm curious to know how many teachers attended at each school, what the participation level was. I mean, we're performing this training, the teachers want it. We had a teacher, Mr. Heaton, here, I think it was our last meeting, who asked for, the high school, I believe this memo, if this information is in response to his request. So the high schools are at the end of the list, which is fine because they're getting covered. But I'm curious to what the attendance is and the participation in each of the schools. Thank you.
Official enrollments.
So we have our October, we call it the October 1st count. And with that said, it's the last date in which we count students, and then we start to do the calculations. And so when you're looking at the number, compared to last year, we just kind of do the numbers that way. We were at, last year at this time, we were at 11,112 students. And this year, we have 11,162 students. So the difference of that is approximately 50 students. I say approximately only because we are, students come and go during this time. It does fluctuate, but certainly that is the number that we have at this time for our students. So enrollment is up, and it's always interesting when you see enrollments, and particularly as we pointed out the last time we were here, that this freshman class is quite large at the South. And so you get enrollment and fluctuations, change in population. We're very, very cognizant of enrollment, and it's all contingent upon housing. And so we're monitoring new developments within the city. We're also monitoring new housing sales and what have you. And all of those variables factor into our enrollment figures. So I just thought it would be a helpful update to the board on enrollment figures and what that looks like.
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I'm curious about Clearway and Brentwood. Are they in the high school number, or are they really separate? Are they accounted for separately?
Go ahead, Donna.
Brentwood is included in the South figures, but Clearway is not.
So there are students, okay, so where would those students be accounted for? We do get state aid for them, right? So this number drives the state aid. So where would the Clearway students be then?
They are in this count, the Clearway students. All of every kid we have outside district, outside placements and everything are included in this number.
Okay.
So when we classify, and Dan, let me just clarify too, when we classify our Clearway faculty, even though they're assigned to the South, they still just go to the Clearway.
I think you're getting confused with Clearway and Brentwood.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Brentwood is included in South. Clearway, I don't personally know if Clearway's in these numbers or not. They're either in the high school or they're not, I don't know, but.
Yeah. I'll just clarify this. If they are, I can check on that, but the number isn't that significant. It's not like 200 kids. It's probably 15, I would say maybe close to 10 to 15 kids, but I can clarify that.
Well, it's state aid that we get based upon this sheet. So if it's 15 kids and it's whatever it is, 3,600 plus, or they may have other qualifying amounts, it's still revenue to the district or reimbursement to the district. That's all. I think we should know if they were in here or not.
Thank you. Ms. Raymond?
Clearway is run by the Adult Learning Center, correct? So we're either paying Adult Learning Center like an out-of-district fee or some other way accounting for them as an out-of-district student. It's not like Brentwood where we have it's just another campus for us. The Adult Learning Center is actually a separate entity from the Nashua School District.
Yes, that's correct, and we have reserved spots for our kids there. So we do currently have both for regular ed and special ed. I believe in just, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I was just say, so those students ought to be accounted for as out-of-district placements, not, and in the enrollment numbers under their own school, like just like someone who has a special need and attends a different kind of specialty school outside of our district. So that's where those numbers ought to be, whether they go to North or South or wherever.
Ms. O'Hensi?
Thank you. With Clearway, we pay for a certain number of spots, like 15 special ed and 45 or something regular kids. Do we have, or could we get in the future an accounting for how many of those seats are full and maybe some of the other out-of-district? Because don't we report to the state, our in-district and out-of-district, all our students? So it'd be helpful to have that information.
I can certainly give you that update.
Thank you.
If I remember correctly, in speaking with the Clearway people, that number fluctuates sometimes on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So that might be a little hard to pinpoint, but we could get some idea. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Yeah, it's an October 1st number. It's good one day a year. That's sort of what the agreement is. What is your number on that day? So whatever that number is, that's good. That's a good number, and it's not about questioning. I think the last time we saw something very similar to this, the special ed out-of-district placements were actually accounted for on this sheet. So maybe that's what we're responding to, is we saw it before. It's not on this particular report. Because I remember it was a column off to the right, and Mr. Donovan actually explained it to us, pointing it out. Is it here and I'm missing it?
No, it's...
I don't think it's on this sheet. This sheet's been pretty much the same, the out-of-district.
Okay.
But there's probably another one that you probably are used to seeing in the budget book.
Oh, but didn't we have it here like a couple of weeks ago? We were asked, Mrs. Oden asked for this report. She asked for things being added, as did I, and then you came back the following week, and I thought it had the out-of-placements, and most of them were for the elementary schools, and very few were obviously. We don't have
Yeah, that was
many
sort of a
guys.
one-time, I know what you're talking about now, it was a couple of months ago. When I saw that in the package, I didn't know where that came from, whereas this is, this is sort of the Bible for the numbers.
Well, I think to Ms. Raymond's point, I'm curious to know where those placements are and in which grade, because we know we live with those placements for the duration of the student's time in the district. So if it's a grade 1, 2, or 3 assignment, we can expect that student to be in a special ed placement for any number of years versus those that might be rolling off as they advance through the grades. It depends, but it's helpful to know because we have some long-term placements that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I remember seeing this in the past, and I know all our administrators knew, it was a 14-inch legal-size paper, but it also listed how many classrooms at each level that they had, because it gives you a good idea of class size at the different schools. Do we have something like that, Dr. Mosley? Are you familiar with that?
We do, and I can get that to you.
Okay.
I can, this is not an analysis of Clearway. It wasn't, the intent of this is just to give you an update of approximately how many students are in the district. This number fluctuates. We have, at times, 5 students coming in, and sometimes we have 2 students leaving. It all depends on what's going on given the day or time. When we usually have some national catastrophes, such as, there was a hurricane in Puerto Rico, we saw a slight uptake in enrollment of kids coming in as a result of those types of catastrophes that happen. So we'll be happy to give you the numbers. I can give you some updates on Clearway. Happy to give you some information on class size. We always make sure that the context of the class size is directly connected to the curriculum in the class. For some of our CAD labs, there are limitations in terms of enrollment. You might see a class capacity of about 15 students, whereas maybe an English class has significantly more students in there. So it's always good to view class size in terms of the programs of studies and as well as what is being offered at that time. Happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. The reason why some of us are asking about Clearway is, I think it was 2 budget cycles ago, there was concern that the space that we've reserved was not being utilized. And then over that summer, because of the visibility we had during the budget cycle, they were fully enrolled going in to the school year. But that was last year, not this year. So we haven't had a report on what the current, I'll call it a subscription rate, might be over there. So I think that's part of why, at least why I'm asking. I want to know if we've reserved 40 slots, are we 20, are we 30, or are we at capacity? And I understand it rotates, and I understand they're coming and going, but it goes to intent and usage, because that was something we were monitoring pretty closely.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. It's a small school. It's in a house, so the capacity is very small. It's only a couple dozen kids at most. Having said that, I believe very strongly that the enrollment there is completely isolated from any budgetary discussions that we might have. The enrollment at Clearway is determined only based on individual students' needs and what's best for them, and it's done in conjunction with a variety of people, including their parents and their service providers and their education team at whichever school they go to. So I just want to be very clear that I object to any suggestion that our budget process, other than reserving those spaces, but I object to any drawing of lines between our budget and how many kids we send to Clearway. We send to Clearway, we reserve the number we think we need on average, and then students get sent there if they need it, if there's space. But they don't send more kids because, they want to use up all the money that we have. They send the kids who need it.
Mr. Greeno?
I just have a quick question for Mr. Donovan. I know that we had contracts that came through Finance and Operations, and wasn't that information given to us, how many openings we have for something like that?
Yes, we have 50 spots open that we can send typical students to. We have 15 that we can send out-of-district students to. We can get an update from Clearway anytime you want. You call up and say, give the current status. You will typically see, for the special ed students, between 10 and 15. Rarely is it at 15, but it's somewhere around there. And the 50, it'll never be 50 in the beginning of the year, because as people come and go, the high school principals, these are all high school kids, so they send them, and sometimes they'll stay for a while, sometimes they'll come back. So you'll typically see between, let's say, 40 and 48 or so.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan, and I believe all the members of this board have that information in their packets. They received that, right, with that contract?
I'm not 100% sure if it was with the contract or not.
Oh,
but-
okay. I thought there was a number that it came through Finance and Operations.
Well, there was the 50 and the 15, but how many
okay.
were there at the time of the contract?
I'm just saying how many we have open. That information, our capacity, this board should have that, the capacity.
Yes, that's in there, yes.
Yep.
Mr. Kaufman?
The contract that Mr. Guarino speaks to has a flat rate of a per student cost. So that contract has a price, I think it's around $22,000 per student, somewhere close to that, and we are buying space. So if we had an average where our enrollment was, say, 30, we, in the past, in finance and at the board, would have considered and had a discussion that we may only fund 30 seats because that's all we had students that were interested in going. So to Ms. Raymond's point, it does have a budgetary impact. And I'm in no way interested in reducing the services provided by Clearway. We went through that during that budget cycle. I actually met with Mr. Hollowell when we were having some, and Mr. Donovan was in part of that meeting. So my questions are to understand utilization, nothing more. I'm a big fan of Clearway. It provides valuable service, but there are budgetary impacts that if we didn't have the enrollments that might come before the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to new business. Ledge Street Elementary Comprehensive Support and Improvement, or CSI School. Dr. Mosley.
All right, so part of what has taken place here is that we got our results back from the state regarding our state testing. And we have a number of schools that have been identified for support. And that identification ranges from subcategories within the schools. So I have Mr. Chaz Miller in the crowd today. I know he wanted to talk to the board a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about the next steps in this process. And so if any of you who are returning board members, we had our Fairgrounds Elementary School that was identified as a comprehensive support and improvement school. And we are identified as for the Ledge Street, additional targeted support. And what that means is that the achievement for our kids was significant that the state has identified the school in that respects. The good news is that we are going to be getting some additional funding and support around making some improvements towards student achievement for kids at the Ledge Street. And so as you can read down below, Chaz Miller, Dr. McKinney, and myself, we have a conference to discuss what that looks like and the supports and the level of funding we're going to be receiving from the state regarding this, what I would call an intervention. So this is an opportunity for us to do some self-reflection on how we can better serve kids in one of our most neediest schools. This does not come as a surprise to myself or any of my leadership team. The Ledge Street has experienced many transitions at the leadership level over the last 3 years. And, Chaz has come in and has done a really nice job getting a sense of the school culture, understanding kids, making connections with our families. We have received, before Chaz showed up, there were a number of families looking for variances out of Ledge Street. And when I shared that information with Principal Miller, he immediately got on the phone and called all of those families and asked them to stay and to give him and his Anna a chance to really right the ship. They've done a wonderful job in communicating that. This letter from the state does not reflect anything that Chaz has done negatively. It just reflects the state of where the school is at. This isn't a negative commentary on the teachers or even the students. It's an opportunity for us to improve, to make some changes, and certainly we're going to move forward on that. I felt that it was necessary and imperative to share this with the board because this is going to be public knowledge as well. You can also receive an additional, what they call additional targeted support if in one of the subcategories in your school falls below the achievement level. And in some of our schools that have special education programs, particularly social emotional kids in their classrooms, we did have some schools that were identified as a result of that classification for that demographic as well. So some of our elementary schools, I don't have it at the top of my head, but I can certainly get it to the board the next time we revisit that. But I felt that it was paramount for the board to understand that one of our schools has been identified in need of this additional targeted supports. And it's the only school that in the district that has been identified as a result, based on the data, that the listed school is the lowest 5% of all Title I schools in the state of New Hampshire. So this is our challenge school in terms of where we want to really make some improvements to better educate our kids. Chaz, would you like to?
You.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I'm curious about the percentage of ELL students at this school and if they have the support that they need, and if they don't, will this money assist with that?
I would just say, and I know you've been a proponent, and I don't want to be smug in any way. I think all of our ELL kids in the district need more support. This is a school that has significant ELL kids there, certainly, as well as free and reduced lunch. And yes, they're in need of that. There's a social emotional piece to this too that we've talked about numerous times. So what I'd like to say, there's a little bit of mindfulness, social emotional pieces, as well as some language support and the academics.
Just to follow up on that, so the state is going to provide that particular school a little bit more funding, or Title I is. So I guess my question is the state determining what the funding is being spent on, or is the district and the leadership at that school determining what it's being spent on?
My reaction is I'm going to find out tomorrow between 1 o'clock and 3 in Concord.
Excellent.
And I'll get back to you on that. Is that fair enough?
That is perfectly acceptable.
Ms. O'Hansi?
Thank you. I'm just wondering about these additional targeted support schools. Are they elementary?
Yes.
Are they mostly Title I also?
Some are.
Okay. And you'll get that information?
I will.
How many, about 2 or 3, or?
4.
Okay.
Including this. I'm saying approximately 4. I can't,
Okay.
not the top of my head, but about 4.
But you'll get that information to us. Thank you.
And this will be public too, on the websites of the state too. So it's out there.
Thank
We
you.
expect, perhaps we'll see that at the next board meeting.
I'll email it to you before that, and it'll come up again in the board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, approval of Secretarial Collective Bargaining Unit Tentative Agreement.
Mrs. Oden?
Mr. Kaufman?
Move to go into non-public session under RSA, which one do we want to use? RSA 91A32E, consideration or negotiation pending claims or
A.
Wrong one.
A, compensation.
I'm sorry.
A for compensation.
Thank you. RSA 91A32A. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charge against him, unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests an open meeting, in which case the request shall be granted.
Second.
Okay. We don't have anybody online, so how many in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Go into non-public session, and I'm hoping this doesn't take too long.
Move to seal the minutes?
Second.
On the motion to seal the minutes, Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. O'Hensi?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
Minutes are sealed at 9:01 p.m.
Now, I'd like to make a motion.
Can you hold it? We have to extend, we're at 9 o'clock, we have to extend the
Oh, are you?
the meeting. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I move to extend the meeting so that we can complete our agenda items.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
On the motion to extend the meeting, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter,
Yes.
motion carries 8-0.
7. Mr. Moats,
I'm sorry, 7-0. We have 2 people missing.
Is it appropriate to ask the question right
Yes,
now?
you may
I
ask
have
your
a
question now. Yes.
Okay, I know it's all off the line for most of the procedures, well, half of the procedures anyway. I left under unfinished business when I got disconnected. So did we finish everything up to board members' comment?
No, we haven't done that. We're still under new business.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. Okay. I will move for approval of the Secretarial Collective Bargaining Unit Tentative Agreement.
Second. I do have one other question, I'm sorry.
Does it pertain to this?
Yes.
Okay.
Under new business, did you do, well, it's not quite, but did you do the Ledge Street Elementary comprehensive support and improvement?
Yes.
Okay. So it's the last thing on the new business. Okay. I just want to
Okay.
follow you. Okay.
We have a vote.
On the motion to approve the Secretarial CBU tentative agreement,
We need the motion again in public, point of order?
we are in public.
Yeah, but we haven't made the motion in public, so.
Ms. Oden did.
I made the motion and,
And Ms. Timmons seconded.
Oh, I thought we did that in non-public, so I thought it.
No, we just did it in public.
Okay, I didn't hear it.
On the motion, Mrs. Oden,
yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
No.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter,
Yes.
we have 6 yeses and 1 no. The motion carries.
Congratulations, and I'm sorry it's so late. I know you people have to get up early in the morning, but thank you. And as a member of the negotiating team, I want to thank you. It was a very, we were hardworking, we put in a lot of time, but it was always cordial, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. We're at the public comment section of our agenda.
We have new business, Mrs. Oden?
No.
Board member may bring any new business before the board.
The motion that
Was to complete the agenda,
was
is
to
what Ms.
complete,
Complete the agenda. The agenda calls for new business. Policy, I think it's BEDB, says that any board member can bring new business before the board.
but the new business
Doesn't have to be
was
on the
not
agenda. Doesn't have to be on the agenda.
Ms. Raymond?
The policy actually states that board members must submit items by 9 a.m. on the Tuesday prior to the meeting if they want it to be on the agenda.
But they can also bring it up at the board meeting without having previously requested it.
I understand that that's been past practice, but that's not what the policy says. So it's up to everyone else what they want to do. Just for clarity, that's not the words that the policy says.
I would like to see a copy of the policy. I'll dig it up on my computer if the board can wait a moment. Because my recollection is that past practice is actually allowed for in the policy. Let me see if I can get it here quickly. So the one I have on my machine is not the most recent. I'm sorry. Perhaps you have it.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring my policy manual with me this evening.
Madam President,
Yes.
it's my understanding that board members had both options. They could submit it, it would be written, and we can also bring it up at the meeting. That was my understanding of the policy.
It was my understanding when the motion was made that it was for items on the agenda.
And yes,
Am I correct?
That was my intention. I wasn't aware that people would bring up something new that wasn't on the agenda because of the specific wording of the policy requiring that, information had to be submitted by a specific time so that we could all have time to prepare.
I can't get out.
Okay, how many would like to move on to the public comment section?
Can you take a roll call?
I'll take a roll call.
Would have to be because we have somebody on the phone.
Okay,
Somebody make a motion.
I move to move on to the next agenda item,
Public comments.
public comments.
Second.
Okay, on the motion, Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
No.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee,
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 2 noes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. Motion carries.
Okay. Public comments.
Adam Marcoux, President of the Nashua Teachers Union. I live at 4 Jolori Lane in Nashua. I would like to thank the board for passing the Secretary's contract. I look forward to bringing it to the Board of Aldermen with you. In other news, it looks like we may be bringing the food service contract soon. That is just news recently, but I will reach out to Ms. O'Gara, Mr. Clausen, the superintendent, but it looks like we will have a tentative agreement soon, hopefully tomorrow. And we've been talking about a lot about food and feeding kids, and I'm happy to report that End 60 Hours of Hunger will not need another sponsor for the February vacation food week. The Nashua Teachers Union Board of Directors unanimously approved funding the February vacation food week for them. It's hard not to, really, when you think about kids in need of food for 9 days with no meals over that vacation week. So we'll be very happy to sign that check and send it over. And we do have something in the works for Meals Matter, but that will be for a later discussion. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to your organization, to your union for doing that.
Point of order. I found policy BEDB, and it says, one paragraph says, every board member has the right to place items on the agenda under new business. New business items submitted to the superintendent 7 days prior to the meeting will be listed on the agenda. Items not included on the agenda may be brought up under new business by any board member. That's at the meeting. So it's part of the same paragraph. So you can have it listed, or you can do it at the meeting. So I kind of think we should follow our policies.
Then I withdraw my objection.
Point of order, we already voted on it and we moved on?
Excuse me, yeah, we have already moved on, and we did vote on it, so, and I'm guessing maybe that policy needs to be looked at because of our time that we have put into our meetings. We now have a time limit, so I think we're going to have to revisit that possibly.
I'd like to make another point of order. I think that when you limited by when you made that ruling that we can only talk 2 minutes and 1 minute, that needs to go to policy. We're not allowed to make new policies at the full board, which seems to have been done, unless it was an emergency, and it wasn't an emergency. And even if it was, it should go to policy to be codified. So I think we're playing fast and loose here, where we just throw policies out whenever we like, and it's not in accordance with our rules that we took an oath to uphold.
I believe the policy was changed, and it is written that committee meetings are an hour and a half, board meetings are 2 hours. That's been changed, and as chair, I had the authority to ask for that. The board voted for that, a majority, and the vote was taken, I believe, 2 or 3 meetings ago to extend that until the end of the year. So
Point of order.
the majority spoke. Thank you.
Which policy was
Excuse me.
updated? When you took the vote to change policy, which policy did you add that 2 minutes and 1 minute to, so I can look at
No,
it?
that was not policy. That was how I was conducting the meeting. And that was made as a motion and approved by a majority of the board.
Without a policy change?
No, you're right. Mr. Guarino, do you have something?
No, I just wanted to reiterate what you said, Madam President. We changed the rules. We don't need a policy to change the rules. We just need a vote of the majority or 2/3 majority, which we got.
Thank you.
We do that all the time.
Board member comments. Ms. Porter?
Oh, I have a request if we could please go into non-public for 5 minutes under RSA 91-A3I.
Can we do that after board member comments? Because we'll never get them otherwise.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
That's my only comment.
Okay. We'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I just wanted to, thank the teachers union and our staff. I am so impressed at the support the kids received regarding their Meals Matter program, and then now the 68 hours of hunger. I know that many of our staff are parents, many are not, but for them to take money out of their own family budgets to try and feed our community's children is just remarkable. And I'm just really proud to be associated with people who care about their community so much. And that's really all I wanted to say tonight. Every day I feel like I hear a story about teachers or staff members reaching out and giving, and especially this season. I know of teachers in schools who are doing clothing drives. I know of teachers in schools who are collecting things for like a Secret Santa kind of a situation for students in need. And they don't advertise it and they don't ask for thanks. They just see needs in their kids and they do it. And I'm very moved and I'm thankful. So.
Thank you. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. If we would have had a chance to bring new business forward, I would have liked to have brought forward the issue where we received an email from Dr. Mosley on Friday, where there was an incident at South High School where there was a police investigation. I was going to ask for an update on that. I'm concerned that the district is taking actions against what may in fact be a lawful act by a citizen. The detail, I personally would rather have a copy of the police report to fully understand what it is, and then request that we put this on the agenda for the next board meeting. I'm concerned that the superintendent is taking legal action against a citizen that may be unwarranted and overstated. And I do want to read one thing in an email that I received, and in which I said that there should be no action on the part of the police until after the board got a full information about it and had a chance to vote on it. Dr. Mosley, did you have something you wanted to say? Because the look on your face, I don't know how to read it.
Excuse me, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had said in an email that I asked that the administration not take any action, not request any action from the police. So, of course, since we can't conduct business in email, but I did get this email from Mr. Guarino from yesterday at 11 a.m. The board has already been fully informed. Thank you, Dr. Mosley, for your updates. There is no need for the board to vote on this. Please issue the no trespass. The safety of our students is the #1 priority. One member of the board who has no children, he's talking about me, in any of our schools is out of touch with what parents like me want. I have a daughter who attends Nashua High South.
Point of
The
privilege.
last thing I want is a stranger with weapons in his car lurking
Excuse
around
me, point of
the Nashua-
privilege.
Point of order.
I have the floor. I'm
No,
reading an
she
public
said-
email.
Excuse me, point of order.
So, folks,
Excuse me.
this is how it is on the board when they don't want you to share information that is publicly available, that was distributed by email. And the
Excuse me,
piece that I want
point
to
of
say
privilege.
is that
Mr. Kaufman, could you please respect this?
I'm the one who was interrupted. You let me finish, and then you
Because of
recognize
point-
another
Because
point.
of point of order. I did recognize her, and you are failing
I had
to-
the floor, Mrs. Oden.
I know,
It's
and
not,
that's why
you,
I
you call
gavelled
it
you.
after
Excuse
someone
me.
speaks, not in the middle of someone who has the floor.
Mr.
The
Col-
point of orders are addressed when there's sort of like a dead spot. And what you've done is interrupt me while I have the floor, and
Point
I
of order.
object, and I appeal the
I would
ruling
ask
of the
A
chair.
recess. We'll have a 5-minute recess.
No.
No, move to
You don't-
adjourn.
Okay.
Excuse me, a point of privilege allows for interruption. The purpose of a point of privilege and interrupting is to prevent someone from speaking on something that they perhaps ought not to unless it is in a non-public or for some other reason.
This is not non-public.
I am making a motion that I object to the discussion of this subject matter because I believe that it could negatively impact the safety of our children. Should we wish to discuss it further, I believe that we ought to get our Director of Safety in here. We might want to have a non-public before we discuss this issue any further. And I believe that the original information about it was very clear that this is a safety issue that ought not to be discussed in public, and individuals on the board made some behavioral choices to try and get that information out with disregard for our safety. So
That's
let's
not true.
ask Mr. Lessard what he thinks before we continue to discuss this topic.
I second your motion to objection.
Mrs. Oden,
Mr. Kaufman.
move to adjourn.
You should stick around for non.
No, we have a non-public
No.
that.
But we're still.
We can
still
take a vote
doing
on it
public.
if he has a second.
We're still
Do you have a
doing-
second? Is there a second?
Nope.
There's no second. Okay.
So we're doing public comments.
It's board member comments. Ms. Hohensie.
Thank you. I would like to talk about the same issue. I will be discreet.
I will have this, I'm going to have the same objection.
No, because I'm not going to say anything that's indiscreet. I'm objecting to the action that's contemplated by this administration. I don't know whether it's happened or not, but it would be a violation to the board's recent vote, which was 7 or 8 to 1, to remove a sentence from a policy that might violate state law. This action goes one step further in violating state law, because the no trespass order wouldn't even be given a warning to the citizen.
Again, objection about this topic.
Fine.
Further, I would bring your attention to our policies regarding public complaints.
I don't compute.
agree.
Look
What
up
I'm-
KEB and KEBR, which will tell you exactly how due process would work in this particular situation. If someone has a problem with the actions of one of our staff members, they are perfectly welcome to complain to the superintendent. If they continue to be unsatisfied, then they may ask for a hearing of this board. Should that occur, I will ask that you both recuse yourself because you have clearly shown that you are not unbiased.
My bias is state law. That's my only bias. I'm trying to follow state law. I have no bias. I don't know the person. I don't know what's going on.
Right, then leave that until they ask for a hearing. When they ask for a hearing, then you can make your decision.
We'll have another lawsuit is my concern.
I doubt it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Guarino.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I'm going to pass at this point because I think Ms. Porter has some business that she wants to conduct. So I'm going to be not say anything at this time.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes, I like to lighten up the mood a little bit. One, I'd like to talk about the Halloween party that was on in October where we gave away coats and food, and it was a really great success. Also, I'd like to thank the NTU and its directors for the meals program. It's great because meals do matter, and we should feed our students. Also, I'd like to point out that we are giving out Christmas trees as well as other things at the Arlington Street Community Center in December. So those things are positive. They help our children, and they're good things. I'm sick of hearing about negativity and that's seeing what the board does all the time. So, therefore, we have some good things in process right now, and that is the Christmas trees that we're giving up and the Thanksgiving that we're going to have next week or whenever Thanksgiving is, a week away. But there's things that are happening that's good in our city, and I'm proud to be a Nashuan, and I'm proud that the city is doing all that they can for our students. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I would like to thank the NTU for, again, stepping up for the 68 hours of hunger. I know it's a lot of work, but you're committed to our students, and if you need any volunteers to help pack, I would be more than willing to help out. Congratulations to the Meals Matter kids. They've done an outstanding job in highlighting a problem that needs to be solved. I also want to say I had a chance to go to one of the Veterans Day celebrations at Sunset Heights. I got invited to, I think, 2 or 3 other schools that I couldn't make. But I'm real proud of our schools saluting the veterans, and it's just amazing to watch these young children wave the flag and sing the songs. I know at Sunset what they do, the students invite a veteran, and the veteran stands up and says their name, what branch of the service they were in, and who invited them. And it's very emotional to those veterans, and some of those kids are just so proud that either their grandfather or, and it's just not it's active duty members that are there also. Matter of fact, one of the active duty members there this year was a graduate of Sunset Heights. So it was really nice. So thank you to all the schools that do that, because it just is a very moving ceremony. So, Ms. Porter, I think you have a motion.
Move to go into non-public under RSA 91-A3I, please.
I second it.
I second it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
On the motion to go into non-public, Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Porter?
Yes.
I have 7 yeses and 0 nos. Motion carries.
Okay. We're gonna